She was the last to take the stage, already judged before she began. But what no one expected was that her dance would carry generations of silence and power. When the silence turned into applause, prejudice was left with no ground. Welcome to the channel. Before we start, please like and subscribe so we can continue creating stories like this. The sound of a strident laugh echoed through the small glass-walled office of the Golden Stars gas station, interrupting the silent routine of that Tuesday morning in Chicago. The laugh came from Henry Morrison, the newly hired manager, a man known among employees for his sharp tongue and questionable humor. He was carefully observing a woman who had just stepped out of an imported car parked near the pumps. She was a figure who didn't fit the usual standards that he, from his narrow perspective, was accustomed to respecting. A visibly overweight woman dressed in simple clothes, but who walked with a serene and firm posture. "Look at this," he whispered to Danny, a young employee, laughing mockingly. "I bet she's coming to buy the entire inventory of the convenience store." Danny, uncomfortable, tried to laugh, but looked away. He knew those words were cruel, and something about his attitude deeply bothered him. The woman entered the store calmly, greeted the employees politely, and headed directly to the cafe attached to the gas station, where she took a coffee and a mineral water. At no point did she seem to notice the jokes being made about her, but she had noticed everything. Henry continued with his comments. He mocked her clothes, the way she moved, even how she held her coffee cup. At a certain point, he approached the woman directly, treating her like any irrelevant customer. With a maliciously disguised smile, he said, "Ma'am, you know this place has bathrooms, right? Just letting you know in case you want to rest a bit after the walk here." The woman looked up firmly and responded only with a "thank you," followed by a slight smile. Then she asked to speak with the manager responsible for the shift. The man, feeling in absolute control of the situation, straightened his posture and proudly declared, "You're speaking to him, that's me. How can I help you?" She then took out a small metal credential with the gas station chain's logo from her purse and calmly showed it to him. "Perfect, I'm Grace Fisher, one of the founding partners of the chain, and I'm conducting a surprise visit to the units in the region to evaluate customer service." The silence that followed was immediate and brutal. Henry's smile disappeared, replaced by a growing panic that spread across his face like a shadow. He tried to stammer a response, but was interrupted with kindness and firmness. "Let's talk in your office, please. I want to better understand your vision of customer service," she said, already walking toward the office. From that moment, the dynamics of the story took a completely unexpected turn. What seemed to be just another case of discrimination became the catalyst for a complete transformation within that unit and throughout an entire business network. In the meeting that followed, Grace not only reported the offensive behavior, but presented detailed data on the importance of diversity, respect, and empathy in the workplace. She revealed that in recent years, she had discreetly led various internal company campaigns aimed at the inclusion of professionals with different body types, ages, ethnicities, and experiences. She explained that her role as a partner was not simply administrative but cultural. She was responsible for shaping the brand's ethical identity. Henry, realizing the magnitude of his error, tried to apologize, claiming he was just joking and didn't want to offend anyone. She listened patiently but didn't let it slide. "The problem isn't just what you said. It's what you represent within this unit. And that needs to change," she stated, with cutting tranquility. That same afternoon, Grace called an extraordinary meeting with all the employees of the branch. In the small staff dining room, where they normally only shared quick lunches, they were now gathered expectantly. Danny, the young employee who had shown discomfort at the mockery, was sitting in the front row, nervous but intrigued. Henry remained standing in a corner, with his gaze fixed on the floor and restless hands. "This meeting is not to humiliate anyone," Grace began, briefly looking at Henry. "It's to establish a new beginning. When we founded Golden Stars 15 years ago, my husband Robert, my sister Caroline, and I had a dream to create spaces where anyone could feel welcome, not just selling gas but cultivating respect." The employees exchanged surprised looks, Most of them had never heard about the origins of the company or its founders. For them, they simply worked at a gas station chain like any other. What I experienced today shows me that we have failed to transmit those values to all our units, she continued. But I also see an opportunity to remember who we are and what we represent. Then she did something unexpected. She took a folder from her purse and began showing old photos, the chain's first gas station, a small establishment on the outskirts of Portland. Grace, when she was younger but equally robust, working as a cashier. Her sister Caroline in a wheelchair designing the company's first logo. Her husband Robert, a short man, negotiating with the first suppliers. The three of us founded this company precisely because we knew the bitter taste of discrimination. Me for my weight, Caroline for her disability, Robert for his height. We knew what it was like to be judged by your appearance rather than your abilities. The silence in the room was absolute. Even Henry had raised his gaze, visibly affected by the story. But we didn't give up. We turned that experience into our strength, and little by little we built a network of 47 gas stations in 8 different states. Danny, the young employee, timidly raised his hand. Ms. Grace, may I ask a question? She nodded with a smile. Why have you never told us this story? I've been working here for 3 years and didn't know any of this. The question echoed in the room like an uncomfortable echo. Grace sighed deeply before answering. You're right, Danny, and that's exactly the root of the problem. With growth, we became distant. We let new managers hire staff without transmitting our philosophy. We allowed numbers and expansion to cloud our original vision. She looked directly at Henry. And so, we ended up with leaders who believe a person's value is measured by their physical appearance. The tension was palpable. Some employees looked at the floor. Others stared at Henry, whose face had acquired a reddish tone of embarrassment. But today that changes, Grace continued with renewed energy. Starting tomorrow, this unit will become the pilot project for our new initiative, the Face of Golden Stars, a program that will celebrate the diversity of our employees and customers in all our marketing campaigns. Murmurs of surprise and curiosity filled the room. Danny, in particular, seemed especially enthusiastic about the idea. And we'll need new leadership to implement this change, Grace added, now looking at Maria, a supervisor who had been with the company for years and was known for her respectful and warm treatment of everyone. Maria, I'd like you to temporarily take over the management of this unit. Do you accept the challenge? Maria, a middle-aged woman with a sincere smile, nodded with determination. It will be an honor, Ms. Grace. The meeting concluded with a renewed atmosphere of hope and purpose. As the employees dispersed, Grace gestured for Danny to approach. I noticed your discomfort this morning when Henry was making those comments. That says a lot about your character. Danny lowered his gaze, humble but proud. It didn't seem right to me, ma'am. I've never liked mockery. Grace smiled. We need more people like you in positions of responsibility. Have you considered growing within the company? Danny's eyes lit up. Always. But I never thought I'd have the opportunity. Well, now you do, Grace replied. I'll talk to Maria about assigning you as her administrative assistant. How does that sound? The young man could barely contain his excitement. Thank you, Ms. Grace, I won't let you down. Meanwhile, Henry waited nervously at the door, unsure of his future. Grace approached him with a serene but firm expression. Henry, I want to see you tomorrow at the headquarters in Lincoln Park, at 9 o'clock sharp. And without waiting for a response, she left the gas station toward her car, where her driver was patiently waiting. Upon entering the vehicle, she took out her phone and dialed a number. Caroline, we have work to do. The transformation we've been planning, I think I've finally found the perfect place to start it. The voice on the other end sounded enthusiastic. The Michigan Avenue branch. Exactly, prepare the team. Tomorrow we take the first step. The next morning, the Golden Stars headquarters in the elegant Lincoln Park neighborhood was buzzing with activity. Grace's arrival had triggered a wave of urgent meetings, phone calls, and rescheduling of agendas. Her sister, Caroline Fisher, the company's creative director, waited in the main boardroom surrounded by portfolios, design samples, and a visibly nervous marketing team. "We've been trying to convince the board to implement these ideas for years," Caroline commented, adjusting her wheelchair to get closer to the table. "What changed now?" Grace smiled as she poured coffee for both of them. "Let's say I found the perfect catalyst." At that moment, Henry timidly entered the room. He wore a formal suit, clearly new, and his face betrayed a night of insomnia and worry. "Good morning," he greeted in an almost inaudible voice. Caroline looked at him with curiosity, while Grace indicated a seat. "Henry, this is my sister Caroline, co-founder and creative director of Golden Stars. Caroline, this is Henry Morrison, until yesterday the manager of our Michigan Avenue branch." The "until yesterday" resonated in the room like a sentence. Henry swallowed hard, expecting the worst. However, what happened next completely disconcerted him. "We need your help, Henry," Grace said in a serene tone. "My help?" he repeated incredulously. "Yes, we want you to be part of the team that will implement the Face of Golden Stars program. No one better than you to understand why it's necessary." Caroline, immediately understanding her sister's strategy, intervened. "You see, Henry, in marketing, there's a fundamental principle. Whoever knows the problem best can best communicate the solution. And you, unfortunately, represent a cultural problem that we've allowed to grow in our company." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Robert Parker, the third founding partner and Grace's husband. A man of short stature but imposing presence, he entered the room with contagious energy. "So this is our catalyst?" he asked, evaluating Henry with a penetrating gaze. "Robert, behave," Grace warned with a knowing smile. "Henry is here to help us, not to be judged." The irony of the situation escaped no one in the room. For the next 3 hours, the team presented Henry with the ambitious plan they had been developing for years, a comprehensive program that would not only change the company's image, but its entire organizational culture. The Face of Golden Stars initiative included campaigns that would showcase real employees in their advertising, diversity, and inclusion, training programs, architectural modifications for greater accessibility in all branches, and the creation of an ethics committee with representation from all hierarchical levels. Henry's role would be to document the transformation process from the perspective of someone who needed to change his own mindset. A living testimony of how recognition of error can lead to personal and professional growth. "I don't understand," Henry finally confessed. "Why are you giving me this opportunity after what I did?" Robert, who until then had remained mostly quiet, responded, "Because firing you would be easy. Transforming you, that's a challenge, and at Golden Stars we don't take the easy path." Meanwhile, at the Michigan Avenue branch, Maria began her first day as interim manager, with a similar meeting, though on a smaller scale. Danny, now in his new role as administrative assistant, took detailed notes while she explained the changes they would implement. "From today on, every customer who walks through that door must feel valued, respected, and welcome, regardless of their appearance, origin, or condition," Maria declared with conviction. "It's not just a corporate directive, it's the right thing to do." The team received the news with mixed reactions. Some employees, especially younger ones like Danny, showed enthusiasm. Others, accustomed to Henry's more traditional and hierarchical management, seemed skeptical. "What about sales targets?" asked Jack, a veteran employee known for his pragmatism. "Do you think customers will come just because we're nice?" Maria smiled understandingly. "Actually, Jack, I have data that demonstrates exactly that." She projected on the wall a graph showing the correlation between customer satisfaction and profitability in different branches. The units with the best ratings in customer treatment also consistently showed higher sales and loyalty. "It's not a coincidence," she concluded. "It's business strategy." Maria's presentation was interrupted by the arrival of a team of photographers and designers sent directly from headquarters. They were led by Sophia Matthews, a young and talented photographer known for her work documenting human diversity in America. "Good morning, everyone," she greeted with energy. "We're the creative team for the Face of Golden Stars campaign. And you," she looked around with enthusiasm, are our protagonists. The confusion was general. Danny timidly raised his hand. You mean we'll appear in the ads? Sophia nodded. Exactly. No hired models, no digital retouching. We want to show the real people who make this company work day to day. The murmur of surprise ran through the room. Jack, the skeptical employee, nervously adjusted his shirt. But I'm not, photogenic. Sophia approached him with a warm smile. Mr. Jack, do you know what the real definition of photogenic is? Being authentic. And you, with those grey hairs and those wrinkles that tell stories, are perfectly authentic. The comment generated relaxed laughter and began to break the ice. Over the next few hours, Sophia's team transformed the gas station into an improvised photo studio. Employees and some regular customers were photographed in their natural environment, serving coffee, pumping gas, chatting in the convenience store. The energy was contagious, and little by little, even the most reluctant began to participate with enthusiasm. Danny, in particular, was flourishing in his new role. Not only did he efficiently coordinate the logistics for the photo sessions, but he contributed valuable ideas on how to show the natural diversity of the clientele. We have customers from all neighborhoods, of all ages, he explained to Sophia as they toured the station. Mrs. Connie, for example, comes every Tuesday with her grandson. She's a widow and the boy has Down syndrome. They always buy ice pops, regardless of the weather. Sophia listened, fascinated by these small everyday stories that gave life to the place. Meanwhile, in Columbus, Ohio, 2 hours from Chicago, another story was beginning to develop in parallel. Leo Gutierrez, regional manager of Golden Stars for the Midwest area, received with concern the circular sent by Grace announcing the new initiative. Unlike Henry, Leo wasn't openly discriminatory, but something more subtle and perhaps more dangerous. A defender of the status quo of what has always worked. This is madness, he muttered to his assistant as he read the document. Surprise visits, ethics committees, campaigns with real employees. Grace has finally lost her mind. His assistant, Veronica Sanders, a meticulous and discreet woman, observed her boss's reaction with concern. Sir, it seems like a well-thought-out project, and according to the attachments, it has the unanimous support of the board of directors. Leo snorted with disdain. Because no one dares to contradict Ms. Grace. But I assure you, I'm not the only regional manager who sees this as a mistake. We're going to waste time and money on a sentimental campaign that won't solve any real problems. He picked up his phone and began dialing a number. Who are you calling, sir? Asked Veronica. Edward Rivera, manager of the northern region, and then I'll call Martin Zachary from the southern region. It's time to form a common front before this madness spreads. While Leo began to articulate his resistance, at headquarters, Henry was experiencing a personal revelation. During lunch, Caroline showed him the company's historical archive. Photographs, press clippings, and testimonies that documented the 3 founders' struggle against discrimination in their early years. No one wanted to give us financing, Caroline explained as she turned the pages of an old album. The bank saw an overweight woman, a short man, and a woman in a wheelchair, and automatically assumed incompetence. We had to mortgage our parents' houses to open the first station. Henry listened in silence, increasingly aware of how his own actions perpetuated exactly the type of discrimination that the founders had faced. The worst, Caroline continued, is that when we finally succeeded, many assumed it was because we had some influential relative or some hidden advantage. No one believed we had achieved it on our own merit. The conversation was interrupted by Grace, who entered the room with a worried expression. I just received a call from Veronica Sanders, Leo's assistant. Apparently, Leo is organizing some kind of rebellion among the regional managers. Caroline sighed, not entirely surprised. It was to be expected. Leo has always been resistant to change. Who is Leo? Asked Henry, feeling like he was entering a family dynamic of which he knew little. Leo Gutierrez, regional manager of the Midwest, explained Grace. An excellent administrator, but extremely traditional. He was one of the first employees of the company, even before we expanded outside of Portland. Robert, who had heard the conversation from the door, intervened. Leo is the personification of the dilemma we face. He's efficient. His numbers are always impeccable, but his vision of the company belongs to the past. "And what will we do?" asked Caroline, already anticipating her brother-in-law's response. Robert smiled with determination. "The same thing we did when the banks rejected us, when suppliers underestimated us, and when competitors tried to sabotage us. Confront it directly." He turned to Henry, unexpectedly including him in the conversation. "Have you ever been to Columbus, Henry?" Henry shook his head, beginning to understand what was coming. "Well, pack your bag," Robert replied. "We leave early tomorrow. You, Grace, and I are going to visit our friend Leo." The afternoon advanced and the transformation was already visible at the Michigan Avenue branch. The first photographs of the campaign had been selected and were displayed on digital screens throughout the station. Customers and employees stopped to observe them, recognizing familiar faces in everyday situations. Maria and Danny toured the place, observing with satisfaction the positive reactions. "You know what's most surprising," commented Maria, "that something as simple as showing ourselves as we are can generate so much emotion." Danny nodded, thoughtful. "I think it's because we rarely see ourselves represented in advertising. It's always perfect, unreal models." At that moment, Maria's phone rang. It was Grace. The conversation was brief but intense. When she hung up, her expression had changed. "Did something bad happen?" asked Danny, concerned. Maria shook her head, but her gaze revealed uneasiness. "Not exactly, but the transformation we've initiated here is encountering resistance in other regions. According to Grace, some regional managers are questioning the initiative." "And what does that mean for us?" asked Danny. Maria took a deep breath before answering. "It means that our work here is not just about implementing a program. We're creating an example that could define the future of the entire company." The sun was just beginning to rise over the hills surrounding Columbus when the Golden Stars executive van stopped in front of the Midwest regional offices. Grace, Robert, and Henry descended from the vehicle, each with a different expression. Determination on Robert's face, strategic serenity in Grace, and a mixture of nervousness and curiosity in Henry. "Does Leo know we're coming?" asked Henry, as he adjusted his tie, still not entirely comfortable in his new role. "No," Robert replied with a smile. "Surprise visits are part of our new policy, remember?" The receptionist at the offices could barely disguise her astonishment at seeing the three founders enter without prior notice. She tried to call Leo to warn him, but Grace gently stopped her. "We'd prefer to surprise him if you don't mind," she said with a smile that admitted no reply. When they entered Leo's office, they found him in the middle of a video conference with other regional managers. On the screen, several faces could be seen, including those of Edward Rivera and Martin Zachary, precisely the allies he was seeking for his common front. "And then I tell you that this initiative is not only impractical, but will divert resources from truly priority areas," Leo was saying when he noticed the presence of the visitors. The color drained from his face. "Gentlemen, I'll call you back later," he said hastily before ending the call. He rose quickly, trying to regain his composure. "Grace, Robert, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't know you were coming to Columbus." "Evidently," Robert replied, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. "It seems we interrupted an important meeting." Leo briefly looked at Henry without recognizing him. "And this young man is Henry Morrison," Grace intervened. "Until recently the manager of our Michigan Avenue branch. Now he's part of the implementation team for the Face of Golden Stars." Leo nodded, increasingly uncomfortable. "I see. We were just discussing that initiative." "Yes, we could tell," Robert commented with irony. It seemed like a very constructive discussion. The tension in the office was palpable. Veronica Sanders, Leo's assistant, discreetly entered with a tray of coffee, casting an apologetic look at the visitors. It seemed clear that she had been the one who alerted Grace about her boss's intentions. "Leo," Grace began in a conciliatory tone, "we didn't come to confront you. We came to listen to you. If you have concerns about the initiative, we want to know them." The strategy caught Leo by surprise, who expected a direct confrontation. He hesitated a moment before speaking. "My concerns are purely practical, Grace. We've been operating with a model that works for years. Our numbers are good. Why risk a radical change?" "Good numbers," Robert interjected. "Sales in your region have been stable, yes, but they haven't grown in the last 3 years, and staff turnover is the highest in the entire company." Leo blushed slightly. "The markets here are different. Competition is fiercer." "Or perhaps," suggested Grace, "we're not truly connecting with our customers and employees." The discussion continued for hours, moving from Leo's office to a larger boardroom, where Grace presented detailed data about the company's stagnation in recent years, not only in the Midwest region, but nationally. While the founders and Leo debated, Henry observed in silence, absorbing every word, every graph, every argument. To his surprise, he was beginning to understand both sides. Leo's resistance was born not from malice, but from fear of change, from fear of the unknown, very similar to what he himself had initially felt. At noon, Grace suggested a break. "Why don't we all go eat? There's a restaurant nearby that's been recommended to me. I want to know more about the city." The suggestion, apparently casual, was actually another strategy. Away from the corporate environment, perhaps Leo would be more receptive. During the meal, at a small family restaurant in the historic center of Columbus, the conversation became more personal. Robert shared anecdotes from the early days of the company, when he himself drove tanker trucks to supply the stations. Grace recalled how many underestimated her in business meetings, always addressing Robert, assuming he was the only decision-maker. "Do you know why we created Golden Stars, Leo?" Grace finally asked. "Not just to sell gas. We could have done that working for any other company. We created it to demonstrate that a business could be successful and humane at the same time." Leo, more relaxed after a good wine, sighed deeply. "I know, Grace, and I deeply admire what the three of you have built. It's just that—" He hesitated a moment. "I'm afraid these changes will dilute what makes us efficient." "Efficient or impersonal?" questioned Robert. "Because there's a difference." The after-dinner conversation extended as the discussion deepened. Little by little, Leo was beginning to understand the true purpose of the new initiative. It wasn't simply a change of image, but a return to the founding values of the company. Meanwhile, Henry was experiencing his own revelation. Seeing the founders so passionately defend their principles, even in the face of internal resistance, made him question his own previous attitude. How many times had he judged others based on superficial appearances? How many opportunities had he missed to genuinely connect with valuable people because of his prejudices? Back at the regional offices, the atmosphere had subtly changed. Leo, although not completely convinced, was more open to hearing the details of the plan. At one point, he asked Henry to share his experience. "We've been told you're part of the implementation team," he said. "What led you to join this project?" Henry briefly looked at Grace, who nodded encouragingly. "The truth is that I was on the wrong side," he began with a trembling voice. "I was caught by Ms. Grace making exactly the type of discriminatory comments that this initiative seeks to eliminate." Leo's eyes opened in surprise. "And yet, they gave you this opportunity." "Precisely because of that," Robert intervened. "Henry represents the change we want to see. We're not looking to purge the company of people who have made mistakes, but to transform the culture from within." Henry's sincerity seemed to impact Leo more than all the previous presentations and arguments. "I suppose if he can change his perspective, I can try to as well," he finally conceded. Before leaving, Grace made an unexpected proposal. "Leo, I want you and your team to visit the Michigan Avenue branch next week. See with your own eyes what we're implementing. If after that you still think it's a mistake, we'll respect your opinion." Leo accepted, albeit with some caution. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the transformation of the Michigan Avenue branch was advancing by leaps and bounds. The first photographs of the Face of Golden Stars campaign had been placed on billboards throughout the area, generating an immediate response from the community. Regular customers stopped to take selfies next to the images of employees they recognized. New customers arrived, attracted by the authenticity of the campaign. Maria and Danny could barely keep up with the increased activity. I've never seen the station so full, Danny commented, as he reorganized staff schedules to adapt to the increased clientele. And the most interesting thing is who's coming. Maria nodded, observing the diversity of people who now frequented the station, from executives in suits and ties to construction workers, families with children, elderly people, young students, a much broader spectrum than before. It's because they finally feel represented, welcome, she replied. People can feel when a place truly respects them. The phenomenon didn't go unnoticed by the competition. Edward Navarro, owner of an independent station a few blocks away, personally visited Michigan Avenue posing as a customer. He observed with growing concern the renewed atmosphere, the personalized treatment, and, above all, the influx of people. Back at his own station, he urgently called his team. "We need to do something similar," he declared without preamble. "Golden Stars is stealing customers from us with this new marketing strategy." His operations manager, skeptical, questioned, "You want us to put photos of our employees in the ads? With all due respect, boss, I don't think that will work for us." Edward vehemently shook his head. "You don't understand. It's not just the photos, it's the entire experience, the way they treat people, how they've transformed the atmosphere." While competitors were beginning to react, at the Golden Stars headquarters, Caroline was coordinating the expansion of the campaign to other branches. The initial success in Michigan Avenue had convinced even the most skeptical within the board of directors. "We need to accelerate," she insisted in a meeting with the marketing department. "Every day that passes without implementing these changes is a lost opportunity." In her private office, she was also reviewing another personal project, the rehiring of former employees who had been unfairly marginalized for not fitting the company's traditional standards. Among the files on her desk, one in particular stood out: Alexandra Dunn, a former supervisor who had been relegated to minor positions and eventually pressured to resign due to her physical appearance. "She'll be perfect for the diversity committee," Caroline murmured to herself as she dialed her number. Thousands of miles away in Minneapolis, Alexandra Dunn received the call that would change the course of her life. After her bitter experience at Golden Stars years ago, she had struggled to rebuild her career in a small family business. Caroline's call took her completely by surprise. "Golden Stars wants me back?" she asked incredulously. "We don't just want you back," Caroline replied. "We want you to lead our new Diversity and Inclusion Committee. No one better than you to understand why it's necessary." Alexandra remained silent, processing the proposal. The memories of her previous experience still hurt. The disdainful looks, the comments about her weight, the promotion opportunities denied without valid justification. "Why should I trust you now?" she finally asked. "Because we're acknowledging our mistakes," Caroline replied honestly, "and because we need people like you to ensure we don't repeat them." The conversation extended for more than an hour. Caroline shared with Alexandra the details of the ongoing transformation, including Grace's and Henry's story. "Something is changing, Alexandra, and we want you to be part of that change." Meanwhile, in his apartment on the outskirts of Chicago, Henry faced his own internal battle. After the intense day in Columbus, he had returned home with his head full of new ideas and questions. Sitting on his small balcony, he contemplated the city while writing in a notebook, an exercise that Caroline had recommended as part of his personal transformation process. "Today, I understood that discrimination is not just an individual act," he wrote. "It's a system that I've been part of without questioning it." The sound of a notification interrupted his reflections. It was a message from an old colleague, a manager of another station, asking him about the rumors of his demotion and offering support to counterattack. Henry observed the message for a long time, recognizing in it the mentality that until recently he himself had shared. Finally he responded, "It hasn't been a demotion but an opportunity for growth. I invite you to learn what's really happening before judging it." The next morning, the news spread like wildfire through all the branches. Alexandra Dunn, the former employee who had sued the company for discrimination years ago, was returning as director of the new diversity committee. The reaction was mixed. Enthusiasm among those who knew her story, concern among those who feared her return, would mean a witch hunt against traditional managers. At the Michigan Avenue branch, Maria received the news with hope. "This shows that the change is serious," she commented to Danny as they prepared the station for another day of work. "It's not just an image campaign." Danny nodded, thoughtful. "I wonder how customers will react when they find out." He didn't have to wait long to find out. That same afternoon, a journalist from the local newspaper showed up at the station, requesting an interview about the visible changes in the branch and the rumors of transformation of the company. "I can only talk about what I see here every day," Maria responded cautiously. "And what I see is a place where everyone is welcome, where we treat each person with genuine respect." The journalist took some photographs, briefly interviewed several customers, and left, promising that the article would be published over the weekend. "Do you think I should have mentioned Alexandra?" Maria asked Danny once the reporter had left. "I don't know," he replied, "but something tells me this story is just beginning to unfold." The article published that Sunday in the Chicago Tribune occupied 2 full pages in the business section. The headline in bold black letters announced, "The Silent Revolution of Golden Stars, when inclusion becomes a business strategy." The report not only detailed the changes at the Michigan Avenue branch, but delved into the personal history of the 3 founders and their original vision for the company, long forgotten during the expansion. Social media didn't take long to react. Hashtags like #DokeDiverseStars and Child the Real Face began to popularize. Customers from all over America shared their experiences at different branches, both positive and negative, generating a national debate about customer service and beauty standards in the workplace. The next morning, Grace's office became the operations center for managing this sudden media exposure. "I never expected it to take this dimension so quickly," she confessed to Caroline and Robert as they reviewed social media metrics. "I wanted a gradual change, not to become a national trend overnight." Caroline, always the strategist, saw an opportunity. "This is the perfect time to officially announce Alexandra's return and the creation of the Diversity Committee. The attention is already on us, let's take advantage of it." Robert, more cautious, expressed his concerns. "What about Leo and the other regional managers? We were just beginning to convince them. This exposure could make them feel cornered." The discussion was interrupted by an unexpected call. It was Leo himself who, to everyone's surprise, wasn't calling to complain, but to inform that the main Columbus branch had experienced a 15% increase in sales over the weekend. "I don't understand what's happening," he admitted, perplexed. "We haven't implemented any changes yet, but since the article came out, we have customers who come specifically because they want to support the inclusive gas station, as they call it." Grace couldn't help but smile. "Do you still think it's a bad idea, Leo?" "Let's say I'm reconsidering my position," he responded with renewed humility. "In fact, I'd like to move up our visit to Michigan Avenue, if possible. My team is eager to see the implemented changes." The domino effect had begun. Meanwhile, at the Michigan Avenue branch, the sudden popularity was generating its own challenges. The increase in clientele required immediate operational adjustments. Danny had spent the weekend reorganizing schedules, training staff to maintain the quality of service despite the increase in work, and ensuring that the spirit of transformation wasn't lost in the midst of chaos. "You should go home and rest," Maria suggested when she found him early that morning, checking inventories. "You've worked almost 36 hours straight." Danny shook his head, tired but enthusiastic. "I can't leave right now. This is what I've always dreamed of, being part of something that really matters." Maria observed him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "In that case, at least, take a break. The Columbus team will arrive in a few hours and I need you to be fresh to receive them." The visit of Leo's team had become a crucial event. They would be the first regional managers to directly observe the transformation, and the expansion of the program to the rest of the branches would depend largely on their reaction. Danny took advantage of the free hours to visit his home, take a quick shower and change clothes. Upon returning to the station, he noticed something unusual. A small crowd had formed near the gas pumps. Approaching, he discovered the reason for the commotion. Alexandra Dunn had arrived earlier than expected and was animatedly chatting with customers and employees. Unlike the traditional corporate image, Alexandra dressed in vibrant colors and, with a personal style that reflected confidence and authenticity, her presence radiated a transformative energy that captured the attention of everyone around her. "Danny," Maria called him from the store entrance, "come and meet Alexandra." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Danny was immediately captivated by Alexandra's personality, direct, genuine, with a natural charisma that made everyone feel valued in her presence. She, in turn, recognized in Danny the leadership potential that Grace had mentioned. "So you're the assistant who refused to laugh at the cruel jokes," she commented as they toured the station together. "That kind of integrity is exactly what we need to rebuild the culture of this company." The arrival of the Columbus team, headed by Leo, added another layer of complexity to an already intense day. The delegation, composed of 5 people, included Veronica Sanders, the assistant who had alerted Grace about the resistance plans. Unlike her boss, Veronica had always been a silent advocate for more inclusive policies. Leo, visibly nervous, formally greeted Alexandra, aware of her history and what her return symbolized. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you," he said with evident discomfort. "I've heard a lot about you." Alexandra smiled, perceiving his nervousness. "All bad, I suppose?" "Not necessarily," Veronica quickly intervened. "Some of us have followed your career after you left the company. Your work in corporate diversity has been inspiring." The tension began to dissipate as the group toured the facilities, observing the implemented changes, from authentic photographs of real employees and customers in advertising, to modifications in architecture to improve accessibility, to new service protocols centered on respect for diversity. What most impacted Leo, however, was the general atmosphere. Visibly committed employees, satisfied customers, a positive energy that he hadn't experienced in his own region. "How did you achieve this change so quickly?" he asked Maria, as they watched Danny explaining the new training systems to 2 team members. "It wasn't the change that was quick," she replied. "It was the recognition. These values were always here. We just needed permission to express them openly." In the middle of the afternoon, the visit was interrupted by unexpected news. Edward Navarro, the owner of the nearby Independent station, was requesting an urgent meeting with the Golden Stars representatives. "He says he has a proposal that might interest us," Danny informed, clearly intrigued. Alexandra, Maria, and Leo met with him in the small conference room. Edward, a pragmatic businessman, got straight to the point. "I want to join your network," he declared without preamble. "My station is losing customers since you implemented these changes. I can't compete with what you're creating here." The proposal took everyone by surprise. Traditionally, Golden Stars grew by building new stations, not acquiring existing ones, and they had certainly never received such a direct offer from a competitor. "We would have to consult with central management," Leo responded cautiously. "But it's an interesting proposal." "There's something else," Edward added. "I don't just want to sell my station, I want to be part of this movement. I believe in what you're doing. I've seen the impact on the community." Alexandra exchanged significant looks with Maria. The domino effect was extending beyond what was imagined, affecting even the competition. While this was happening, in a small cafe a few blocks away, Henry was having a much more personal meeting. In front of him, visibly nervous, was James Cruz, a former Golden Stars employee who had been fired during Henry's management at Michigan Avenue, supposedly for poor performance. The reality which Henry now confronted was very different. "I fired you because you didn't fit my idea of what the company's image should be," he admitted with a broken voice, "and that was wrong, deeply wrong." James, a middle-aged man with a slight disability in his left leg, listened in silence, processing the unexpected apology. "Why are you telling me this now?" he finally asked. Because I'm learning to take responsibility for my actions, Henry replied. And because Golden Stars is changing. They want to offer you your position back with compensation for the months without work. James smiled with a certain irony. And you're the messenger? That's quite a twist of fate. No, Henry clarified. I'm the person who needs to apologize before you consider the offer. What I did has no justification, but I want you to know that I've understood my mistake. The conversation continued for almost 2 hours. It wasn't easy or comfortable, but in the end, when they said goodbye, something had changed between them. It wasn't friendship, certainly, but a mutual recognition of humanity that didn't exist before. Back at Michigan Avenue, the visit of the Columbus team was concluding with an informal work session. Leo, initially skeptical, was now enthusiastically taking notes on every detail he could implement in his region. I never thought I'd say this, he confessed to Alexandra, but I think I've been wrong all these years. I've been managing stations, not serving people. Alexandra nodded understandingly. Sometimes we need someone to show us another perspective. It took me years to overcome the bitterness of how I was treated at this company. But now I understand that my purpose is greater than my personal pain. The day ended with an improvised dinner in the station's cafeteria, where Michigan Avenue employees and visitors from Columbus shared experiences and ideas. Danny, exhausted but satisfied, observed the interactions with amazement. Just a week. Ergo, these people didn't even know each other. Now they seemed united by a common purpose. Maria approached him, offering a cup of coffee. "What are you thinking?" she asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About how something negative can transform into something so positive," he replied. "All this began with an act of discrimination, and look where we are now." Meanwhile, at headquarters, Grace was receiving reports of the visit and Edward Navarro's unexpected proposal. "What do you think?" she asked Robert, who was analyzing the financial projections of a possible acquisition. "From an economic point of view, it makes sense," he replied. "The location is strategic, and acquiring an existing station is cheaper than building a new one. But there's something more important." "What?" asked Grace, though she intuited the answer. "The message we would send," Robert explained. "We're not only transforming our company from within, but we're beginning to change the entire industry." Caroline, who until then had remained silent, reviewing the first designs of the new corporate uniform, now available in all sizes and adaptable to different body types, intervened. "Speaking of messages, I think it's time to make it official. We need a press conference to formally announce the changes, Alexandra's return, and our renewed vision." Grace reflected for a moment. Media exposure wasn't something she personally enjoyed, but she understood its strategic necessity. "Agreed," she finally conceded. "But with one condition. I want Henry to be present. His testimony is an essential part of this story." "Are you sure?" questioned Robert, concerned. "Publicly exposing his previous conduct could be counterproductive." "On the contrary," Grace replied with conviction, "showing that even someone who perpetuated discrimination can change and be part of the solution is exactly the message we want to convey." The dawn of the next day found Chicago covered by a fine drizzle. At Michigan Avenue, Danny arrived early as always, but this time with a special purpose. He had spent the night developing an idea that he was now eager to share with Maria. "What if we create a mentoring program?" he proposed as they prepared for opening. Experienced employees guiding new ones, not just in operational matters, but in how to handle situations of discrimination, how to actively promote inclusion. Maria considered the idea with interest. "Something like inclusion ambassadors." "Exactly," Danny replied, enthusiastic. "And we could start here as a pilot project before expanding it to other branches." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of James Cruz, the former employee whom Henry had contacted the previous day. He came not only to accept the offer of reinstatement, but with surprising news. "I've been working these last few months with an association that supports people with disabilities," he explained. "When I told them about the changes at Golden Stars, they were very interested in a possible collaboration. That small morning conversation would be the origin of another significant transformation, the creation of Accessible Stars, a specific program to adapt all branches to the needs of people with different disabilities and, more importantly, to actively incorporate them into the company's workforce. The rain increased when Henry arrived at headquarters to prepare for the press conference scheduled for that afternoon. Caroline greeted him, having set up a small photographic studio to update his corporate image. "Nervous?" she asked, while a makeup artist applied the finishing touches. "Terrified," he confessed with a tense smile. "I never imagined I would be at a national press conference, much less telling my own story of failure." Caroline looked at him seriously. "It's not a story of failure, Henry. It's a story of transformation, and that makes it much more powerful." At 4 in the afternoon, the conference room at the Park Plaza Hotel was packed with journalists, representatives from other companies in the sector, diversity and inclusion activists, and, to everyone's surprise, a considerable group of regular customers from different Golden Stars branches. Grace, Caroline, and Robert occupied the main stage, accompanied by Alexandra, Henry, and representing the employees, Maria and Danny. What followed was much more than the announcement of a new corporate strategy. It was a declaration of principles, a reconnection with the company's founding values, and a public commitment to transformation, not only internally, but throughout the entire industry. 6 months had passed since that press conference that forever changed the course of Golden Stars. The spring morning in Chicago promised to be especially significant. The Lakeside Convention Center was preparing to receive more than 1,000 attendees for the first National Congress of Inclusive Companies, an event that, to everyone's surprise, had been jointly organized by the main gas station chains in the country, led by Golden Stars. In the main lobby, an immense photographic mural welcomed the participants. Real faces of employees from all participating companies, of all sizes, colors, ages, and conditions, smiling with authenticity and pride. Among them stood out the image of James Cruz, now director of the Accessible Stars program, alongside Danny, recently promoted to regional training coordinator. Grace Fisher observed the bustle of preparations from a quiet corner. She wore an elegant turquoise suit that highlighted her figure without trying to hide it. At 58, she had never felt more comfortable in her own skin, nor prouder of what she had built. Caroline approached her, her wheelchair now personalized with the company's vibrant, renewed logo. "Ready for your big moment?" she asked with a smile. Grace nodded, although her eyes revealed some nervousness. "I never thought giving a conference would make me more nervous than founding a company," she confessed. "It's different," Caroline replied. "When we founded Golden Stars, nobody was looking at us. Now the entire sector is watching every word you say." The opening of the Congress was scheduled for 10 a.m., with Grace as the main speaker. Her intervention, titled From Discrimination to Transformation, the Power of Respect as a Business Strategy, was awaited with great expectation. Among the attendees were CEOs of important corporations, government representatives, academics specialized in corporate social responsibility, and most significantly, employees from all hierarchical levels of the participating companies. While the attendees were taking their places, Henry Morrison was finalizing details on the stage. His transformation in these months had been as remarkable as that of the company itself. He was no longer that arrogant and discriminatory manager, but the respected director of cultural transformation at Golden Stars, responsible for implementing inclusion programs in all branches of the country. He was accompanied by Maria, now regional manager for the metropolitan area, supervising the 12 branches with the highest influx. "Have you seen who's in the front row?" Henry whispered to Maria, discreetly pointing toward the seats reserved for special guests. Among them, Leo Gutierrez was animatedly chatting with Edward Navarro, whose station had not only been integrated into the network, but had become a model of accelerated implementation of the new corporate values. Next to them, to Maria's surprise, was Michael Thompson, CEO of Petromax, Golden Star's main historical competitor. "What's he doing here?" asked Maria, amazed. "He came to learn," Henry replied. "Or at least that's what he said when he requested his invitation. Apparently, they've also been losing market share to us." At 10 o'clock sharp, the lights dimmed and Caroline took the stage to give the official welcome. With eloquence and passion, She briefly narrated the transformation story that had begun 6 months ago, culminating with the introduction of her sister. When Grace took the microphone, an expectant silence invaded the room. "A little more than 6 months ago," she began with a clear and firm voice, "I entered one of our branches and was greeted with mockery about my weight." She paused, allowing the discomfort of that crude truth to settle among those present. I could have limited myself to firing the responsible manager and moved on. But that incident made me realize something fundamental. We had lost our essence. And recovering it would require much more than disciplinary action. For the next hour, Grace shared with astonishing honesty not only the successes of the transformation, but also the challenges faced, the resistances overcome, and the lessons learned. She presented concrete data: a 27% increase in global sales, a 65% reduction in staff turnover, a 43% improvement in customer satisfaction indexes, and an 88% increase in job applications. But these numbers, she clarified, are just the consequence, not the objective. The real success is in the human stories behind them. At that moment, the giant screens in the auditorium showed an emotional documentary video. In it, employees from all branches shared their experiences, from veterans like James, who had returned after years of unjust exile, to new hires specifically attracted by the renewed corporate culture. The diversity of the testimonies was overwhelming. People with visible and invisible disabilities, from different ethnicities, ages, sexual orientations, gender identities, and of course, all types of physical builds. At the end of the video, Grace made a surprising revelation. What began as a response to a discriminatory act has become the greatest catalyst for growth in our company's history. So much so that today I can officially announce that Golden Stars will expand internationally for the first time, starting with branches in Canada, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. The ovation was immediate and deafening. Amid applause, Caroline returned to the stage for the next phase of the event, a panel titled Transformation Testimonies, moderated by Alexandra Dunn. The panelists represented different aspects of the change. Henry as a symbol of personal learning, Leo as an example of overcoming initial resistance, Danny as a showcase of emerging talent, and, surprisingly, Michael Thompson of Petromax, who would publicly reveal for the first time his company's decision to initiate a similar process. "Competition in prices and services will continue," Michael declared during his intervention. "But discrimination can no longer be part of our business model. Golden Stars has shown us that inclusion is not only ethically correct, but commercially intelligent." The sessions continued throughout the day, alternating technical presentations on implementing inclusive policies with emotional personal testimonies. In the middle of the afternoon, during one of the breaks, Grace was conversing with a group of young entrepreneurs when a woman timidly approached. "Ms. Fisher, I don't know if you remember me," she said in a soft voice. Grace looked at her attentively. Something in her face seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it exactly. "I'm Martha Daniels," she continued. "About 8 years ago, I applied for a job at your company and was rejected in the final interview. The human resources manager told me, without beating around the bush, that my appearance didn't fit the corporate image." Grace felt a pang of pain upon hearing that story, one of many that had occurred during the years when the company strayed from its founding values. "I deeply regret that," she responded sincerely. Martha smiled warmly. "I didn't come to complain, but to thank you. That rejection drove me to create my own diversity consulting firm, and now," she made a significant pause, "I just signed a contract with Petromax to advise them in their transformation process." Grace hugged her spontaneously, moved by that unexpected twist of fate. "Sometimes rejections direct us to better paths," Martha reflected. "But that doesn't justify discrimination. The important thing is that now we're building a world where fewer people have to go through that." That casual conversation would have consequences that neither of them could imagine at that moment. 3 months later, Martha would join the Golden Stars management team as Director of International Expansion, leading the company's entry into new markets with a specific focus on inclusive policies adapted to each cultural context. As the day progressed, another significant encounter was occurring in a more discreet corner of the convention center. Henry, during a brief break, found himself face-to-face with Edward Rivera and Martin Zachary, the regional managers who had been part of the resistance attempt organized by Leo months earlier. Far from the hostility that Henry expected, both showed a curious interest in his personal experience. "You were very brave to expose yourself like that at the press conference," commented Edward. "Not everyone publicly admits their mistakes." Henry shook his head. "It wasn't bravery. It was necessity. Somehow telling my story in public helped me close a chapter to commit more deeply to the change." Martin, who until then had remained quiet, confessed, "I also mocked customers for their appearance. I never admitted it, not even when Leo called us to oppose the changes. I felt threatened because deep down, I knew I was also part of the problem." That honest conversation among three men who had perpetuated the discriminatory culture symbolized, perhaps better than any statistic, the depth of the transformation underway. It wasn't just a change in policies or image, but a genuine evolution of consciences. As evening fell, the Congress culminated with a symbolic ceremony, the signing of the National Pact for Inclusive Workspaces, an unprecedented commitment, subscribed to by the main companies in the American energy sector. Among the signatories, in addition to Grace, Caroline, and Robert for Golden Stars, were Michael Thompson of Petromax and representatives from 10 other competing companies. The terms of the pact included concrete commitments, elimination of discriminatory practices in hiring and promotion, adaptation of physical spaces to guarantee universal accessibility, mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff, and creation of oversight committees with participation from employees at all levels. This is not the end of a process, but the beginning of a new era in American business culture, declared Robert during the signing ceremony. What today seems revolutionary, tomorrow will be the minimum acceptable standard. Amid applause, Grace added, "And let's always remember that we're not doing anyone a favor. Inclusion is not charity, it's business intelligence. Talent and loyalty don't have a specific weight, height, color, or condition." That night, as the Congress attendees celebrated at a closing cocktail party, Danny observed the interactions from a quiet corner, accompanied by Maria. "Do you remember that morning at Michigan Avenue?" she asked. "It seems like it was in another life." Danny smiled, remembering the exact moment when everything began to change, the discomfort he felt at Henry's mockery, the revelation of Grace's identity, the meeting that transformed the course of the branch. "If they had told me then that we would be here today, I would never have believed it." "Which part would have seemed most incredible to you?" Maria asked with curiosity. Danny reflected, for a moment, that Henry would become a defender of inclusion, probably, or that competing companies would join the initiative, or perhaps, he briefly hesitated, that I would be coordinating training programs at the regional level. "For me," intervened James, who had silently approached the conversation, "the most surprising thing is that my return to the company wasn't just to recover my old position, but to lead something completely new and meaningful." At that moment, Grace joined the small group. Despite the overwhelming success of the Congress, she seemed serene, even thoughtful. "Everything all right, Miss Grace?" asked Danny, noticing her expression. "Better than all right," she replied with a warm smile. "I was just thinking about how unpredictable life is. That day, at the gas station, when Henry mocked me, I felt so much indignation. But now, seeing all the positive fruits that emerged from that painful moment, I almost feel gratitude." "Gratitude toward Henry?" asked Maria, surprised. Grace gently shook her head. "Toward destiny, perhaps, or toward the human capacity to transform conflict into growth." The conversation was interrupted by Caroline, who approached with enthusiasm. "I need you all to come to the stage. The reporters want a photo of the transformation team, as they've dubbed us." As they walked toward the main stage, where Henry, Robert, Alexandra, and Leo were already waiting, Grace shared a final reflection with Danny, who was walking beside her. "Do you know what's most valuable about all this?" she asked in a low voice. That we've demonstrated that inclusion is also good business? He ventured. No, she replied, with a depth that surprised him. The most valuable thing is that we've rediscovered the original purpose of our company. We're not just selling gas. We're creating spaces where each person is seen, respected, and valued for who they are, not for how they look. The photograph taken that night, with that diverse group of people united by a common purpose, would become an iconic symbol. It would appear in business school textbooks, in international reports on organizational transformation, and more importantly, on the walls of each new Golden Stars branch that would open its doors in the years to come. Next to the image, there would always be the same phrase, spontaneously coined by Grace during her closing speech. The true Golden Star is not a logo, it's the light that shines when a person feels valued exactly as they are. 2 weeks after the Congress, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Henry visited his old Michigan Avenue branch for the first time in many months. He wasn't coming as a supervisor or executive, but as one more customer. While waiting to be served a coffee, he observed the transformations, the authentic photographs that now decorated the walls, the newly installed access ramp, the Braille menu available next to the cash register, and above all, the natural diversity of the staff who attended to each customer, with energy and respect. A young employee who didn't recognize him served his coffee with a genuine smile. On her badge, a small insignia indicated that she was in the process of learning sign language. "Can I offer you anything else?" she asked kindly. Henry shook his head, too emotional to speak. When the young woman walked away, he discreetly took out his phone and wrote a message to Grace. "I'm at Michigan Avenue. Now I fully understand what you told me that first day. The problem wasn't just my words, it was what I represented. And now seeing what this place has become, I feel the full weight of my responsibility, but also the joy of having contributed, even if involuntarily, to this change." Grace's response came almost immediately. "Sometimes we need to stumble to learn to walk more consciously. Welcome home, Henry." That simple phrase, "welcome home," resonated deeply within him, because indeed, Golden Stars had become that for thousands of people who previously felt excluded, a place where they could authentically be themselves. A workplace home where diversity was not only tolerated, but celebrated as the true source of the company's strength. And it had all begun with an act of discrimination transformed into an opportunity for collective growth. As he left the station, Henry looked one last time at the luminous Golden Stars logo that shone against the Chicago sunset. The symbol was the same that had presided over the entrance since the company's founding, but its meaning had expanded and deepened. It no longer just represented a successful chain of gas stations, but a movement of cultural transformation that had begun to extend beyond its corporate borders, demonstrating that respect for diversity was not simply an ethical stance, but the path to more sustainable and meaningful success. As Grace would say months later, in an interview for Fortune magazine, "The most beautiful irony of our story is that we return to our roots to be able to grow toward the future. And in the process, we rediscovered that our greatest strength was always precisely in what makes us different." Dear listeners, we hope that Grace's story and the transformation of Golden Stars has deeply moved you. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special list with equally captivating stories about overcoming, inclusion, and the transformative power of respect. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of business and personal life in America and beyond. In the comments, we'd love to hear about your own experiences of difficult moments that transformed into opportunities for growth. We'll see you in our next story.